And these items aren't going to solve all the problems that sort of were above, the issues of complexity of computers themselves and throwing on top of it the issues that are related to design and new media. But there are some proposals as to how to get at some of the design issues, especially the set that's under knowledge in the head, knowledge in the world, but we'll get to that in a minute. So first of all, this notion of closing the windows. The idea here is that one of the parsimonious ways to solve a lot of the design problems, the straight line, the quickest way to solve a lot of the design issues, is to just design for one person and one function. But of course, that doesn't work in a market. It doesn't scale very well. But a lot of the problems go away or get lessened. A lot of design issues, a lot of the computer issues get lessened or go away the fewer functions you're trying to put into the activity. The fewer functions you're trying to put into the device, the fewer functions you're trying to put into the application, and the more targeted the market, the more segmented the demographic, then the more specific or specialized can be the work. And the more specialized the work, it can be adjusted, and a lot of that stuff about complexity and a lot of the other issues just kind of go away. So closing the window means narrowing the design, to function, to demographic, so that you've taken away all the fat. Right? There aren't very many new media products that do that. There are some, but there aren't very many. Part of the problem, is that everybody wants to monopolize the whole mess. And as soon as you want to expand that audience to a wider audience and start doing everything for everybody, it gets, once again, you get back into all of those problems. I don't know how many of you have a phone in your pocket or in your backpack. I assume that all of you do. And I would also assume that none of you have a phone that is just a phone. Which means there's only one person in the room who has a phone that's just a phone. But the rest of you have a phone that's also a text thing, maybe a web browser, maybe a music machine, probably a calendar, good Lord knows what else. Right? In that case, what was a very simple device has become a Swiss Army knife. And actually, that industry would like to do even more, and we'll talk about that today in the course of reading Chapter 1. That raises a lot of design issues. Okay? Part of what happens in terms of the development of those things is how the dickens do we design this thing to get more functions into this little tiny box without decreasing the functions, making them still rich enough that people will pay for them, and yet the thing works. Okay? And it's mobile, and it's getting smaller, and it's at price point. Starts getting very complex the more you add. But yet, now we have let's see, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Air went very well. But we do have the iPad. And we'll see on top of the experience with the Air whether the iPad works by sort of closing the window. It's not really a computer. Kind of is, but it's not really it's not a full function computer. It's not a phone, right? So it doesn't have to do, it reads newspapers, watches movies, reads magazines really well. Everything else seems to be kind of around the edges. That would solve an interesting set of problems for one big segment of the industry, the print guys. And then maybe the movie guys. And then maybe it might solve Apple's problem not having to make that iTouch screen so much bigger that it stops being a functional iTouch anymore. We don't know. But that's sort of it's a pitch in that direction. Kind of says we can do some stuff in design really well. We can make it really cool to read a newspaper or a magazine. Okay? And everything else is kind of around the edges, maybe movies. Right? But it doesn't try to do other stuff. Part of their problem is now what happens if we try to build a computer in that? Well, if we try to put in a full-function computer in that, then that disappearing keyboard thing doesn't work as well. You know, when it's only there for a couple of notes, it's okay, but if it was there for full time, then it's got to be a different device. Then all of a sudden, the whole interface, the whole package starts to change. You know, so closing the windows helps, but yet can you do it? Okay? Solve some of the design problems, but can you really pull it off and have a market and have the thing sell and such? I'm not sure. I haven't seen the sales figures, but I can't imagine that the Air sold 4. Okay, they sold more than 4, but I mean, does anybody know anybody who owns one? Nobody. You know, I haven't seen one out there except when they first came out. I saw a guy on a plane with one, but you know they're just not ubiquitous. I think it's like the Newton. It was the wrong idea. Anyway, okay. So then the second set comes. This proper balance of knowledge in the head and in the world comes from Norman in the Psychology of Everyday Things. And these are mostly focused on that usability issue, right? On the issue of functionality and usability and how you design such to make sure that stuff works. And these are his suggestions for making sure that stuff works. Okay? And so they don't altogether get at the other kinds of design questions. But again, since really the first set of design questions isn't the aesthetics, and it isn't how it makes people feel, and it isn't the meanings that people get off of stuff, it doesn't work, right? And is it usable? And these respond to that issue, and that's that everything that we make that's technological provides affordances, suggestions as to how it might be used, and some affordances are better than others. Some affordances are misleading. Some affordances aren't adequate. Can't tell what this button does. Can't exactly tell how to hold it. Can't exactly tell what to do. That the affordances that are issued ought to be useful. And to the degree that they're not, they're really troublesome. Okay. And then this notion about visibility, I really ought to, and this is a problem with computers. Eh? It's a problem with every electronic device like your car. You really don't actually want to look under the hood. I don't know if you have bought a new car lately or you've been in a new car, if you open the hood, the damned engine doesn't even show anymore. It's under some kind of cover. You know, most of it's not even present, let alone or visible. Not only, well, you hope it's present. But, and that's a problem with computers as well. Folks, it's kind of gotten like the phone. I don't really care how it works as long as it works. The problem, of course, is that the less we know how it works, then the less we can figure it out when it doesn't work. The less we know what to do about it and what to do with it. If you really can't see what it's doing, it gets to be kind of problematic because then you don't know if it's slow, if it's fast, what it's, you know, what is it working? Is it so? You know, you build in, you design in lots of these clock kinds of things, or dial kinds of things, or progress kinds of bars, or stuff to let people know what it is that's going on. But you recognize, without me beating this dead horse with a stick, the computers aren't very good at this part. That they're really kind of designed to have everything be invisible inside this magic black box. Okay? And that's a built-in design flaw of computers. And that's not to say that they need to be transparent and everybody sees how the circuitry goes. They'd be too confusing. But there has to be enough that shows so that you can figure out how to use the bloody thing. And it's one of the reasons why people spend so much time working on computers instead of working on the problems, is that they kind of don't, you know, there's so many functions in there. There's very little that really shows. So generally, I mean, take 3 steps back. What is it that shows on a computer rather than, and I don't mean the buttons to turn it on, but what is it that most people work with that shows? What is it that's visible in a computer, in computational systems? You guys in some classes are learning to design them. It's a design issue. What is it that shows? What do we call it? What's the most visible part to users?
The GUI?
Yeah, the interface, the operating system, the OS, the thing that makes it look like you can use it rather than you can't. Remember, that's the idea essentially that Jobs and Gates got together with Wozniak in the garage. Oh, what if we take this thing that, in order to make it work, people have been typing line code. Nobody's ever going to be able to do that except computer scientists. What if we take this and have a metaphor for it? Okay? Let's have something that people are familiar with. Let's see. How about the office? Okay. Can we put the whole office on? How about the desktop? Trash can. Drawers. Oh, we can't call them drawers. It reminds people of pants. Folders. Okay. And you get this GUI interface, right? And then Jobs makes the worst decision he's ever made in his entire life, and Gates makes the best decision he's ever made in his entire life. Gates goes off and says, I think I'll let everybody have this. And Jobs goes off and says, no, just us. And you get Windows and OS out of it, and Apple out of that. So you have this visibility, the state of affairs. And this, every device has this interface, besides the buttons and stuff, that makes it work or doesn't. And you know from, if you have a lifetime of experience with the Apple interface and the Windows interface, you know the difference. One's easy, one never was, even though it was intended to be. And it's always an issue of visibility. What am I supposed to do when I get all these error messages, that's all this code? What am I supposed to do when the folder system doesn't really show until I've gotten 4 deep? Okay. Strong conceptual model. This notion that it actually does have a great concept behind it in the design, so that it does speak to the user. Okay? And every technological design has to have this kind of model. And sometimes designers just miss. They just don't get it right. And the user opens it up and starts to use it, and they go, how? Does this work? I don't get it. It doesn't speak to me. Right? And then there aren't enough steps to get people through that. There wasn't a good model to start with. Okay? Good mappings. There has to be some relationship between what I do and what happens. And it somehow has to show. Right? Now, the balance here is always between what I know already and what I don't know. And then, given what I know and what I don't know, right, what's available to me in the interface or the operating system or whatever it is that I'm coming in contact with. Okay? So you don't have to tell me stuff that I already know. It's already apparent to me. I don't need to know that I have to turn this on in order to make it work. Right? You have to tell me about what I don't know. Okay? And that's a tough one, because so that's why when you close the windows, and I know I'm working for her, and then I can figure out what she knows, and I can design one thing for her, right? Then it's easy. Tiffany knows this much, and she needs this, I design this for her. It's going to be easy for her to use because I know how much she knows about using it. Piece of cake. Okay. But when I start getting a bigger population, I'm not sure what everybody knows. So then I have to start kind of guessing about how much I have to tell people in order to make the mapping clear, for instance. Okay. So if you're dropping an avatar into a virtual world, they create themselves and then plop, there they are. Now what do they have to know? And how do you get them from where they are as this newborn avatar in this virtual space to where it is they're supposed to go learn what it is they need to know? Okay? And trust me, it is a huge problem. Okay? Linden's really good at it, and they're really lousy at it. Every virtual world is really good at it, and they're really lousy at it. They're really good at it in they get anybody to be able to use the stuff. They're really lousy at it in that the learning curve is just, it's like walking through dry or wet cement. Okay? So those of you who play shooting games know you get in there and you just get killed and killed and killed and killed and killed until you figure out how to dodge once, and you go looking for the key and it's not there, and you fall over the cliff, and you go and you got to go do it again and over and over, unless you're using a cheat or somebody tells you over your shoulder what you're supposed to do, or you're just really intuitively good at it. All right? But sometimes when I get off a freeway in a strange town, I take the right turn, I just happen to get there. It's just blind luck. generally, when I get in a strange town and I get off the freeway the first time, I got to look at some kind of map or some kind of indicator as to where I'm going to go, right? GPS helps me or whatever it is. Okay? So you need feedback. The system has to tell you where you are and where you're going and what you're doing. And again, computers can be kind of fuzzy in that regard. Okay? So anytime you have it open and you click on it, say you're on the internet and you click the browser and you're going to go someplace, you click a link and off you go. Now, I mean, you can watch a little bit of what goes on at the bottom, right? Checking in with some double click in some other places, but you don't really know where it's going and why the hell it's taken so long and what's going to happen. You know you think you're eventually going to get there. But what happens when stuff starts going wrong? So I'm in a hotel all weekend long, right? In Washington, D.C., and I pay for wireless. And when you're in a wireless cloud, especially in a hotel, you never know what you're going to get. So sometimes I go on and I click and I wait a little bit and boom, up it comes. And other times I click and nothing happens. And, okay, is it broken now or is it just slow? A lot of people on, or do I need to call the tech? So I got a few bars, 5 bars, looks like okay, but nothing's going on. Eventually I end up after 45 minutes the first night calling tech services, and I get through 2 guys, and he finally says, oh yeah, I can see there's something wrong. We'll check on it. Check back in an hour and a half. What does that mean? So I just went to bed. Get up the next morning. Now what's indicated by my performance? That they checked it, and there was nothing wrong, that they rebooted it, and it's fixed. Am I slow because there's a lot of people on it? So how do you get feedback in the system? Okay? Really, there ought to be a little LED there that says the network's running slow, your connection's bad, there's too many people on, the bloody thing's down, we suck, whatever. But it's generally in computing systems, it's not there. Okay, that's sort of problematic. Is what kind of feedback to give folks about what's going on. We're going to get to a concept about what people like in terms of interacting with machines, and kind of what they like with machines is what they expect with people. And with people, you get pretty constant feedback. Now, it might not always be accurate, but it's pretty constant. Unless you have some kind of visual or auditory impairment, you're getting continuous feedback from the people you interact with at almost all the time. Now, it's not altogether transparent. Just because you're looking at me doesn't mean you're paying any attention to me. Right? But at least I get that much. Whereas if you were gray boxes, I get nothing. It's just, the screen doesn't really tell me what's going on. So we like that. And then, of course, test, and retest. And maybe, that might be, in terms of usability, the most important design principle up here, even though you think about other stuff when you think of design, but almost no matter what you do. The bottom line issue, especially when you're first starting out, is to test this stuff and retest it and have a dumb terminal test it. Oh, wait, I wasn't really talking about you. But somebody who's never used it before. You poke somebody next to you and you say, you're my dumb terminal. Why? I'm not dumb. No, it's just that you've never seen it before. You're brand new. Right? I've designed it. I've been working with this for 6 months, 4 months, 3 weeks, 3 hours, whatever it is. I know what it's supposed to do. I know that when it comes up, there's a reason why that's little, that's big, that's green, that's blue, that's a dot, that's a button. Somebody who's never used it doesn't know. So you always get that non-user to use it when you're testing, the beta tester, right? To go through it and see what you don't see. And of course, as you plan projects, you got to leave that great big space of time toward the end. Well, as a student, usually you leave that great big space of time toward the end as the last push to get it done, which really ought to be back a week or two. So you've got that great big space at the end for testing and retesting. So then you can fix it before you turn it in.